I'm going to start the show like I would not normally start the show. Good evening and welcome to the Vintage House Show. The Vintage House Show is the premier broadcast illuminating the lives and careers of house music pioneers, legends, and the people who they've inspired. The Vintage House Show is broadcast on WNUR 89.3 FM and HD1 in Evanston, Chicago. Today we have DJ Sohmi on the stream and on the call today, and we're so happy to have you here with us today. Thank you so much for joining us, DJ Sohmi.
Good morning, and thank you so much for having me. It's an honor.
Well, we are just so pleased that you're coming to Spybar on Saturday. And is this your first travel to Chicago, or where else have you been in Chicago over the
Sure.
years?
So, this will be maybe, I think, my third or fourth time in Chicago, maybe fifth time. The first time was a couple years ago, just for fun with some friends, and this was long before I was DJing and doing music. And I just recall it being such a clean and beautiful city. I just thought, wow, this is one of the cleanest cities, I think, in the United States that I've been to. And I just love the vibes. And then last year I was able to come back for the first time and perform and play as a DJ. And that was actually at Spybar. So this will be my second time at Spybar. But it feels like it's been a long time. So I'm excited to be coming back.
Well, that's good. We're happy to have you. I guess no one told you that you should not travel to Chicago between November and April because it's freezing already here. So
Yeah.
just FYI.
Right. Well, before I moved to LA, I did live on the East Coast. I was living in New Jersey and commuting to Manhattan every winter, as well as the nice seasons. So I don't know if New York ever gets as cold as Chicago does, but I've experienced my fair share of terrifying winters.
Very good. So you'll be right at home. It was 70 degrees last week this time, by the way. So
Oh,
we just, Chicago's just, it takes those major turns. Do a lot of places in the country and the world, but it is alarming. We were starting to get a little happy with the climate change. And unfortunately, winter has arrived and it is it's not coming in softly or smoothly. It is just coming right in. So already snowing a little bit in Chicago. So be prepared,
okay.
definitely be warm. Happy to hear that you think Chicago's a very clean city. Chicago's downtown and some of the surrounding communities are really beautiful. And we have a beautiful lakefront. And, as many cities do, Chicago allows you to really enjoy yourself in the summertime. Everything is free, music all over the place. And so we're happy to have you as a part of our music scene now. Hopefully, you'll be back more and more. DJ Somi, as I see a little bit of your bio, what I recognize is that you're more than a triple threat. You're a pianist, you're a producer, you're a DJ, you're a singer. There's a lot of different influences, in there. So talk to me a little bit about sort of how you became DJ Somi. I'm going to ask, where were you born, birthday, things like that.
Sure. Well, I guess rewinding all the way back, I was born in New Jersey, where I mentioned I also lived prior to moving to Los Angeles. So I was born in New Jersey. I feel like I have roots kind of on the East Coast of the United States, even though I moved to Asia with my parents when I was very, very young and spent pretty much the rest of my formative life there. So born here. And then right away, I was less than a year old. My parents had to relocate for my father's job, and so we first relocated to Tokyo. And I was in Tokyo from 1 to 3 years old, and I have no recollection of that, unfortunately, because Tokyo is such a cool city. And to be honest, I haven't even had a chance to go back since I was 3. So I am
Oh,
dying to go back to Tokyo.
mhm.
But then from Tokyo, we moved to Hong Kong. And this is where I start to, have memories that I can remember. So I was in Hong Kong from ages like 3 to 8. And this is where I remember really starting to explore music. In Hong Kong, my experience with music was sort of twofold. First, I can recall starting to like begin my piano studies. And so this is where I started to learn classical piano, and I studied it quite seriously. I don't know if it was my choice or my mom's choice. I can't remember, but I was pushed fairly hard to compete
Mm.
in sort of like national, piano competitions and stuff like that. And so from a young age, I kind of learned what it meant to have discipline through music. Um, and but also, really, really, really fell in love with it. It formed a big part of my identity. Like I was always doing music, and that's kind of how I understood myself. Um, and then the other part was that I was first exposed to musical theater in Hong Kong through these international touring groups that would come to cities like Hong Kong and Seoul and just major cities abroad, um, and put on shows like Les Mis and Phantom of the Opera. And I just fell so in love with the theater of it and the music. And I remember being like 8 years old and watching Les Mis for the first time and thinking, I want to audition for this show. How do I want to be the little the street girl, the Cosette, the little beggar girl. Like I want to play her someday. Like how do I do this? And that just became my obsession was performance and theater and music. So um yeah, and so after Hong Kong, we then had to move one more time to Korea, finally to I guess my homeland. I'm South Korean. My parents are Korean, and the passion for classical music and theater continued there. So I enrolled in a new school, and thankfully the school had music department and fairly good like theater department, and I just soaked it all in. That I aside from studying hard in school, all of my time was spent in rehearsals of some sort.
Mm.
Choir, theater, jazz band, and I was playing the piano in jazz band. I mean, you name it. Just I didn't want to go home. I just wanted to be in school and do every kind of music performance that I could.
I think that's what every parent wants. We want you to be encouraged by something and be in school. We, of course, prefer you have all A's, right? But I think that just because you want to be in school is a positive that so because some students, are not gravitating to school and getting themselves into,
Yeah.
concerns or issues. But the fact that you want to be in school is always a positive, just being exposed to unique and new things. So that's fantastic. So your influences are classical music, musical theater. When did you realize that you had a voice, that you could sing?
Apparently, because I don't remember this, I was way too young, but my mom says that I just started singing kind of out of the blue, like at age 1 or something like that. Like I was just like, she doesn't know where I picked it up. No one taught me. I would
Mhm.
just hear melodies and just start, I couldn't even really speak, but I was just humming melodies. Like it became very obvious that I could pick up on melodies very quickly and was singing them back in whatever way, like a 1-year-old can sing them back. um,
Wow, that's amazing.
yeah, so I think this love for music has always been inside me. I don't know that it was taught, or I don't know that it was a choice. It feels like I was kind of just born to be in love with this thing.
Well, clearly, it is innate that you are a performer. And then it becomes, what are you going to focus on to perform? And I guess the world is lucky to have you as a part of the house music and music community. So, talk to me about that time in school. So, you're in Hong Kong and you're in Korea. You're in jazz band, you're in musical theater, you're classical piano. There's a lot of different things going on there. Talk to me about your introduction to dance music.
Wow. So it's interesting. My introduction to dance music came about so late in my life. And I guess, well, when I say dance music, like I said just now, I guess the kind of dance music that I'm referring to is underground dance music, classic house music and techno,
Mhm.
um, the dance music that forms the backbone of the kind of dance music that I play now. But I guess in a way I was always kind of exposed to dance music, even if I wasn't aware that it was rooted in house or techno. Like I remember in the 90s, I was in Korea, and there was this one record that my dad had become obsessed with or something, because he would always play it like every Sunday morning. And it was by a Korean, like, kind of soul K-pop star, but it was in retrospect a house track. Like
Mm.
it was absolutely like I listened to it now and I'm like, this was a house track. I just didn't know what that meant.
Right.
But she's singing in Korean, and it's a very fast-paced, upbeat house track, and and that was my first introduction to that kind of music, but I just didn't know to call it house music, right? So
Mhm.
I just thought, oh, this is that fun song that dad always plays on Sunday morning. Um, and so I think my ears and my brain were exposed to some of that without knowing what it was. And then, you know, I think we heard influences of that in pop music all the way through today. You know what I mean? Like I recall in the 2010s, pop music going in a kind of housey way for a moment. Like
Mhm.
I remember when Lady Gaga first came out and got really big with tracks like The Fame Monster and Just Dance. Like again, when I reprocess those tracks, I'm like, these are very housey as well. The backbone of her productions are housey. Um, and again, I just didn't have the language, to know what to call it. I just thought this was club music, or I don't know. um, and so I think I was being exposed to elements of dance music through pop, through K-pop, through American pop, without realizing, where it came from or what it was. And then it wasn't until 2016, like I mentioned, when I moved to LA, where I think just by chance of falling in with a new group of friends that was very into raving and and dance music culture. They kind of just welcomed me into their world and started taking me to these warehouse parties and festivals. And that's when I was like, oh my gosh, like what is the where has this music been my whole life? This sounds like where all the pop stuff comes from, you
Mhm.
know.
Mhm.
And then I went crazy after that. I started doing like a retroactive deep dive into the history of house music and techno, because I just needed to understand like what this was and where it came from, because I had fallen so madly in love with it. So
That's
yeah, that was
wonderful.
about 6, 7 years ago.
That's a great story. I don't want to skip a step, however. So you're in Korea, and are you in primary and secondary schools in Korea?
Yes, yes,
And you attended Duke University?
I did. Yeah.
How did you end up at Duke?
So, Duke was a choice that I made, for a couple of reasons. One of them being that my father had also attended Duke University, and I think just the idea of having something like that I could share with him for the rest of my life, something that we could bond over, was really appealing to me. And I wasn't super close to my dad growing up. Um, I think one of the bonds that we shared was our love for music. But besides that, he was very busy. He was traveling a lot for work. I didn't always feel that we had like a very deep relationship. And
Mhm.
so I think choosing to go to Duke was kind of my way of wanting to bond with my dad, to be honest. And so And I did the college visit tour, that whole thing, and I was just blown away by how beautiful the campus was. I was like, wow, I hadn't seen anything like that growing up in major cities in Asia. Like I had grown up looking at concrete and
Mm-hmm.
glass, and and just kind of landscapes you see in major cities. And so looking at trees and space was I don't know, I guess that was new for me. So, and grass. So I chose to go to Duke for that, for those reasons.
That's interesting. I love my best friend went to UNC in Flagler for business school.
Hmm.
And I visited her her last year in March. And March in Chicago is still very
Very
cold.
cool.
You sometimes I think when you sometimes you're in these places, I've traveled the world, but sometimes you're in a place so long or through the winter, I think everything depresses you. You just think everything
Yes.
is gray and dark and brown, you know. And I got on a plane and I don't know what was going on. And I looked out the window, I was like, my God, it's green. It's green here in North Carolina. It was like, this is amazing. It's March. It's green. There are trees. There's, it was like, my friends thought I was nuts. I was like, this is amazing. Like this happens, so
Yes,
it's
exactly.
weird. Again, I've traveled everywhere, but that particular time visiting her in North Carolina blew me away. I was like, wow, it's so beautiful here. It was just so interesting. So
I
that's
think
good. I have,
that's a bit of
yeah,
how I felt visiting the campus as well. Yeah.
yeah, it's a little weird. I'm always amazed by the conversations about people and their parents and wanting to be close to their parents. I must have been the only child who wanted to avoid every adult, including my own parents. I was like, I don't want to spend time with them. I don't want, people are like, oh, is your dad taking you? It's like, no, I don't want him taking me anywhere. You know what I mean? Like, just, so, so I'm always amazed by that. I would have been happy if everyone was traveling. You know what I mean? But they
Right.
were right there. They're right on top of you. So it was a bother for me. So okay, so Duke University, what kind of music are you listening to at Duke? What's going on at Duke?
Duke, in many ways, like the music, my music life there was an extension of what was going on in high school and prior. So again, I continued my studies of classical piano at Duke.
Oh wow.
Um, I had considered majoring in music at Duke, and then I realized once I took a couple of the introductory music theory classes that I don't like music theory, or beyond a certain level. When it got to the point of the composition classes and being forced to compose, in the classical form of music, that's when I was like, this is not for me. Because, I was like, my ear likes what it likes. And why am I not allowed to use these chords? And the teacher, well, because back then that would have been like the devil's chord or whatever, to have the
Mm.
fifth interval and I was like, well, but I like the way that sounds. And, I was getting like D's and F's in, in classical music composition because I didn't want to follow the rules because I was like, but, this sounds good to my ear, but that's not allowed, you know that wasn't allowed back then. And so I was like, you know what, I don't think I can continue on with the major in music. So I got as far, I got my music minor. Um,
Okay.
but so I was doing classical piano at Duke, and I also got involved in the theater department, and I was performing in the plays and musicals. But I think the most formative thing for me was I joined one of the collegiate a cappella groups. And
Mm.
it's just like you saw, in the movie Pitch Perfect. I mean, when I first saw that movie, I was like, oh my God, like how did they know? I was like, this feels, I mean, in many ways it feels exaggerated, but there was a lot of truth in that movie to kind of my college experience with being in an all-female a cappella group and competing, and there's the all boys groups and the mixers and all that stuff. So that was a lot of fun. And one of my favorite things that I got to do uh, while being in this a cappella group was arranging music. I had never done that before. I had never taken existing music and kind of transcribed it for myself, into different layers and parts, and basically recomposed a piece for that was instrumental into something that people were meant to perform with just their voices. Um, yeah, that was I absolutely adored arranging music. And I think that experience really became, I don't know, kind of the thing that has now allowed me to be a producer and a songwriter. I think just that initial experience arranging music, because it's less scary than composing music. You know, I didn't have to make something up out of thin air, write a song out of thin air. All I had to do was take a song and make it my own. And that just felt, I think, like manageable practice before eventually writing my own music.
Got it. So it does sound like the perfect experience to becoming a producer, still using your voice as as a vocalist as well. So that
Yeah.
brings sort of all of those tools together to become DJ Sohmi. So 2016, you're introduced to this music, you do a deep dive, you find out, my assumption is you find out a little bit about Chicago, a little bit about Detroit.
Yeah.
And but how then do you decide to, I'm gonna create some music, I'm gonna mix some music? Where is that? Where did that transition happen? Give me the dates on that and where and when that happened.
Sure. So, 2016, I moved here. I made my new friends. They took me to the raves, and that was the beginning of me discovering this stuff, this music. And but it took 2 years between that initial introduction and deciding to make the leap and start doing this for myself. And so during those 2 years, the first year I was working at my tech job here. I mean, that's why I was out here initially. I had just signed on with a new startup and they relocated me from the East Coast out here. So for the first year, 2016 to 17, I was a product manager, and I was just on the weekends and well, also the weeknights going out to the clubs. And then by day I was a product manager. But by the end of that first year, I just felt like, I don't know, I couldn't keep up with the charade anymore. I didn't want to be at work. I just wanted to be at the clubs. And so I left after a year. I decided, you know what? I've been working and grinding for the last almost 10 years, and I'm going to take a little break. And I called it my sabbatical, to go and learn more about this underground dance music. And I was initially only supposed to maybe take like 3 months off, I don't know, and see where it went. And that ended up being an entire year of just going to even more festivals, using up all the savings I had to travel, go to festivals, continue to pay my rent without having to work for a bit. And at the end of that second year was when I decided, okay, I think I'm ready to invest in some equipment. I'm going to buy my first, little mixer and controller. It was a Pioneer XDJ, one of those setups that has the two CDJs, and then, well, not really CDJs, but the two plates and the mixer all connected. And so I started to learn how to mix on that. And then, that was 2018, like around January, February. And then after a couple months of doing that, I decided I also need to learn how to produce my own music. Um, Everyone around me was telling me, if you want to make it past being a local DJ nowadays, your sort of ticket out of that, your ticket out of being just known in your local scene, is to make music. That's how people and everywhere else are going to hear your name. I was like, oh, that makes sense. And I want to write music. I've always had that itch inside me, and so I guess it's time to learn how to make music in the context of dance music, which would be electronic music production. So June of 2018, I enrolled in some production classes. I think we met like maybe twice a week. It wasn't anything, super, super intense, but it was exactly what I needed. Like, to go into the studio, I took some one-on-one classes. That was important to me, not to be thrown into like a big class, but just I wanted that one-on-one attention. So that I could go in and ask my questions, twice a week, then go home and fiddle around by myself. That's kind of how I learned best, is to try stuff out on my own and then come back with specific questions where I got stuck and get that direct attention and have my questions answered. So I did that for the rest of 2018. And by the end of that, I by no means was I an amazing producer, but I could get my ideas down, and I could get help from other producers and mixing engineers and whatnot to kind of polish up my ideas, but I could get them out of me at least. And so, yeah, 2018 was the year that I kind of laid down the groundwork for being, I guess for the Sohmi project. It was the year that I learned how to mix and DJ and produce all at the same time.
Wow. And now you're Saturday night, you're going to be at Spybar. All of those tools have come together in a dynamic way, which I think is fantastic. The bio says that your style is a minimal pop tech. Is that
Yes.
correct? How do you define that? Tell me how you came to that.
Sure. I was so the sound minimal pop tech, I think, most accurately describes the sound of the music that I produce. And how that came about, I don't know. I think I just one day was like, what does my own music sound like to me? And I just took the keywords that popped into my head. I was like, well, my productions are minimal. Part of that started out as a production kind of constraint because I was like, this is all I know how to make for now. But I think, sometimes when you give yourself that kind of sandbox, you actually can be more creative within it, right? Because it's like, making the most of what you have. And so I was like, okay, my music sounds very minimal to me. In a way that I like. I like minimal dance music in general. And then I was like, well, what are the defining qualities that it have? And I think my productions have a kind of techie quality. I think that goes hand in hand with minimal energy. But when I think about, it's not techno per se, but it's not a straight house either. I don't know. I guess it's kind of a blend. It sort of sits somewhere in the middle. And so that's where the tech portion of it comes from. And then the
Mhm.
pop is my voice. I think that my voice just naturally kind of has a poppy quality to it. It's just the tone of my voice. I don't have necessarily that deep, wonderful, rich, soulful voice that, you hear on a lot of like classic house records. My voice just doesn't sound like that.
You're not doing a
Um,
gospel tour anytime soon, right?
no,
So
no, as much as I wish, I wish I
right.
could sing like those amazing, incredible gospel singers, but my voice just doesn't sound like that. But I think there is a poppy quality to my voice that makes my music sound a little unique and fresh, because it's kind of like unexpected, I think, in some ways to hear these minimal underground tracks, and then to hear it's like my voice is that little splash of pop that makes it, I guess, a little different.
Well, I think that's fantastic. I mean, you know who you are, and as a performer and as a musician, as an artist. So, if you're not going to be banging out, sort of soulful, that kind of thing, you know what your minimal pop tech is, I think, fantastic. And it's certainly gotten you some fantastic recognition. So I see you were recently in Billboard as top 20 to watch. Is that what it was? Yeah, top 10 to dance artists to watch in 2022. How
Yeah,
did this come about and what did you think about it?
that's a great question. I'm assuming that maybe I was on someone's radar, or maybe my name was submitted, to the editors, and I suppose they thought I was worthy of being on this list, which is mind blowing to me. But yeah, I'm sorry. What was the second part of your question? Was how did this come about, and
And what did you think about it?
what I think?
Just were
Yeah,
you surprised or just like,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah. This kind of stuff always still surprises me. You know, um, I don't know. Yeah, I don't know why at this point it continues to feel like a surprise. Maybe because you know, there I just, I've now shared my life history with you, but I always, I'm like, wow, I'm just, in my mind, I feel like I'm still this young girl from Hong Kong and Korea that, loved theater and musicals. And so to be recognized in this way, just still feels very surreal, I guess.
It is. I think it's great. I'm just going to listen to a little bit since we have it up.
Sure.
I was listening to it earlier. I was like, I love if you're minimal pop tech, I love minimal pop tech. It's
Wow, thank you.
yeah, I love it.
Do you kind of
I like
hear?
the chill dance music. I'm a Chicagoan. I love a soulful house, but sometimes I just like to just chill, just
Yeah.
relax. Yeah. All right. So this is wonderful. So I'm happy to see that you're being recognized, and hopefully that advances your career. And so talk to me about your first big festival. I see you've been to Coachella and others. What was your first big fest and how'd you feel about it? Or maybe your first big venue. Even if that first big venue was 100 people, how did you feel? And then when you got to the big fest, how was that for you?
Well, I guess my first memory of both big venue and festival are kind of like one. And so and it's so distinct for me, I guess I have to share about that one. But basically, so I mentioned 2018 was the year of studying and practicing and learning and, laying the groundwork down. Then so by 2019 is when I started to first come out as Sohmi and start to play some sets, just played in small local venues here in LA to start. And it was just crazy. Like somehow 6 months into that, so by June of 2019, I had the opportunity to go back home to perform in Seoul. Well, I guess it wasn't in Seoul, it was sort of a city outside of Seoul, but in South Korea. I went back home to play at Ultra Music Festival in Korea. And so I went, it was like going from 0 to 60, like I went from playing for like 20, 30, 40 people at most at these small local like LA venues to suddenly playing my first festival. Um,
Wow.
all the way back home in Korea, nonetheless. And so yeah, that was wild. And that was the first time that I was finally able to share my world and what I had been up to with my parents.
Mm.
Because they live in Korea still, they had no sense of really what I was out here doing. They knew that I had quit my very stable tech job to do this, and which they were not thrilled about, and they kind of had to take a leap of faith in me when I was telling them, look, this is all going to work out someday. Just, I know it seems crazy. But for the first year and a half, they couldn't like picture what I was doing, really, So to be able to bring them to this festival back home in Korea, it was just such a full circle moment. And, you know, it, I played an early set time, so there didn't end up being, thousands of people or anything, but maybe all for the best because, for my first festival gig, I think I might have freaked out if I had, walked up and seen 10,000 people. But it was enough for me that my parents got to be there. Like I feel like I was almost performing for them. Like mom and dad, this is what I do now, and I that ended up being like the key turning point in our relationship with this career path of mine and their acceptance of it and they're becoming supportive. Because I think once they saw the scale of the production of events like that, they were like, oh, this is legit. Like I don't know what they were picturing previously. I think they were picturing just this life is just about performing in seedy like nightclubs, and it's legal things are happening left and right, and it's just all bad. And I wanted to show them no, like the culture of house music and dance music is very welcoming and loving and bright. And yeah, there are dark warehouse parties, but there are also daytime festivals. We have it all now. So.
I think it's extremely valid for parents to hear anyone in the music industry. Everyone knows these stories of these, again, the legends how they progressed. It started in a CD, something or another, drugs, you know, that kind of thing, you know,
Yeah.
people. So it makes sense that, you know, parents would be concerned, especially since, you know, you spent a lot of time reading books and in schools. So, you know, like, what are you doing now? You could have just done that. Just read books. So I understand that, and I'm happy you did get a chance to for them to see that and to see that it is valuable. You're an artist. You're more than just sort of a thinker,
Yeah.
and you can do more. So I think that is wonderful. So you know, as we end this, I do want to just give you your standard, almost like we're in a scholarly venue. I want to ask those standard questions. So where do you see yourself in your career in the next 2 to 5 years? You know, let's interview question, right? So I'm going to give you the standard interview question. What do you think you want to see? And I think, you know, everyone should think about that across the board, no matter what career they're in. It's like, what am I doing? I've progressed really fast now. You know, what's the next step in DJ Somi's career? And before I ask that, how did you come up with Somi?
Sohmi. So Sohmi is kind of, you know, it's an alias. It's a lot of people think it's my real name, which it's understandable because Sohmi is a Korean name actually. So in Korean it would be pronounced more like Sohmi,
Somi?
um,
Okay.
Sohmi as opposed to like Sohmi. Um,
Hmm.
but it's not my given Korean name. I have a different Korean name that's much harder to pronounce and also spell. And so I thought we better not go with that. But I wanted to perform under a name that did sound Korean. That was important to me to kind of put my roots out there. I just
Right.
wanted to make sure that it was easy to pronounce as well, you know. And
I
so
understand.
I took some of like the letters and from my initials. My name is Stephanie O, and so the S comes from Stephanie, and the O comes from my last name. And I just, you know, I had to add one more syllable to the end to make it a, you know, a Korean name. So Somi.
Does Somi mean something in Korean?
It might, it probably does, but
Okay,
I don't know. I don't personally know what it means, if it means anything in Korean.
got it. And what is your Korean real name, given name?
So my given Korean name is Hyunji.
Got it.
Doesn't quite have the
Um,
same ring.
you know, you never know. You know, you could have put the emphasis on something else, could have worked, but Somi is working, so that's fantastic. I'm a big fan of names and understanding names. You know, I think, you know, my culture was renamed in this country, and it bothers me that I do not have an African name. I've given myself my own African name, and
Oh, wow.
just like Mr. Obama did, he, you know, made sure that people were calling him by his real name as he became an adult. So you're very lucky and blessed to have a culture that you know and a name that's been given to you that means something to somebody. You know, so
Sure. Yeah,
you
that's
are
a
very
great
blessed.
perspective. I love that.
Yeah. So this Saturday at Spybar, when do you come to town? When are you popping in?
So I arrive, I play on Saturday. I arrive right on Saturday. So not a ton of time, sadly, to spend exploring because I love Chicago. But you said it's freezing right now, so maybe this isn't the right time to explore anyway.
Little chilly, just bring the big coat, hat, scarf, glove set. You'll be ready if you do. Bring them anyway, even if you're not staying long. You never know what could happen. So, well, we look forward to supporting you at Spybar on Saturday. The Vintage House Show and WNUR Street Beat team will be excited to see you there. We hope to see you there. And we
Amazing.
look forward to, you know, sort of, we want to hear a little bit of sort of how you can bring into your minimal pop tech sound a little Chicago classic house music. If you can combine some of that, the Chicagoans will go nuts. So we
Absolutely, absolutely. That's a great
yeah,
idea. I'm gonna, after we get off this call, I'm gonna go back and yeah, think about how I can really creatively do some of that. So
for me, give me some Jamie Principle, who's one of my favorite artists. So Jamie Principle did a lot of work with Frankie Knuckles, but he's a phenomenal artist on his own and still around in Chicago and globally, by the way. Anything else you want to tell our audience? You're going to be at Spy Bar. Where else are you going to be, and how can we find you I also know that you are brand ambassador for Armani Exchange, so that means you've got to be on media channels all over the place. So where can we find you and where are you next?
Sure. So next I've got I'll be in San Francisco this Friday and then straight from San Francisco to Chicago. Um, so that's what I've got going on this weekend. And as far as finding me, online, I'm in all the usual places. You can find me on Instagram. I'm sometimes on Twitter, but not so much. You're more likely to connect with me on Instagram. And I'm trying to get more attuned to this TikTok thing, but I have to admit it still kind of eludes me a little bit. Maybe it's a generational thing. I don't know. But my handle for Instagram is at Sohmi_.
That's Somi underscore. Fantastic. DJ Somi, thank you so much for being our guest on the Vintage House Show. Again, the Vintage House Show generally airs Wednesdays, 10 o'clock, and on WNUR 89.3 FM. The Vintage House Show on our Instagram and our Twitch, and also the Vintage House Show .org for our YouTube page. So join us there. Check out DJ Sohmi at Spybar this Saturday. We'll see you there. Thank you so much again, DJ
Thank you for
Sohmi.
having me. Thank
Safe
you.
travels.
Thank you.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Bye.